I never expected to find anything of my brother's again, let alone in the dim, cluttered corner of my garage. It was a Saturday afternoon, the kind where sunlight slants through the windows and dust floats in the air like tiny ghosts. I was searching for an old wrench when my foot struck something solid beneath a pile of forgotten tops. I bent down, heart thumping, and pulled out a box, heavy, wooden, and covered in a thick layer of dust. For a moment I just stared at it, my mind racing. My brother had always been the secretive one, the wanderer, the one who left without warning and never looked back. He'd vanished months ago, leaving behind only questions and a silence that echoed through every family gathering. We'd argued before he left, words I regretted, words I never got to take back. Now here was this box, as if he'd left a piece of himself behind for me to find. The box was old, the corners worn smooth, the latch rusted but still intact. There was no note, no explanation, just a strange sense of weight, like the box itself was holding its breath. I brushed off the dust, my hands shaking, and tried to remember the last thing my brother had said to me. Was this his way of reaching out? A message, an apology, or maybe a final goodbye? I carried the box inside, setting it on the kitchen table. The house felt different, charged with a nervous energy. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was inside would change everything. The shock of finding it, the confusion of what it meant, and the ache of missing my brother all tangled together in my chest. As I sat there staring at the box in the fading light, I realized I was standing at the edge of a story I never wanted to tell, a story that began in the shadows and would, one way or another, turn my life upside down. The sight of that box brought back memories I'd tried to bury. The last time I saw my brother, it was late autumn, the air sharp with the promise of winter. He'd shown up at my door unannounced, hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets, eyes darting everywhere but at me. We'd always had a complicated bond, close as kids, but as adults our lives had twisted in different directions. He was restless, always chasing something just out of reach, while I clung to routine and responsibility. That night, he'd seemed more distant than ever. We sat in the kitchen, mugs of coffee cooling between us, the conversation circling around safe topics, work, the weather, old family stories. But beneath the surface, I could feel the tension, the things we weren't saying. I wanted to ask if he was in trouble, if he needed help, but pride and old wounds kept my questions locked away. He'd laughed at one of my jokes, but it sounded hollow. "You ever feel like you're just passing through, not really belonging anywhere?" he asked suddenly. I shrugged, unsure how to answer. He looked at me then, really looked, and for a moment, I saw the brother I'd grown up with, the one who used to sneak out with me to catch fireflies, who'd cover for me when I broke Mom's favorite vase when he stood to leave. He hugged me tighter than usual. "Take care of yourself," he said, voice rough, "and don't let the past keep you from living." I watched him walk down the driveway, his figure swallowed by the darkness, never imagining it would be the last time I'd see him. After he disappeared, the questions haunted me. Was he running from something or searching for a place to start over? Had I missed a sign, a plea for help? I replayed our last conversation over and over, wishing I'd said more, done more, been more of a brother when it mattered. Now, with the box sitting in front of me, those old regrets and unanswered questions came rushing back. I wondered if this was his way of saying goodbye, or if somehow it was a chance to finally understand the brother I'd lost. News of the box spread quickly. My mother was the first to call, her voice tight with worry and hope. Did he leave a note? Anything to say he's all right? I could hear the fear behind her questions. The same fear that had haunted her since the day my brother vanished. My father, always more stoic, simply asked, "What's in it?" as if the answer might finally explain the son he never understood. My sister arrived next, her eyes red from crying. She hovered near the box, arms crossed, as if guarding herself from disappointment. "He always did love his secrets," she muttered, half angry, half sad. "Why couldn't he just talk to us?" Her words stung, echoing my own regrets. As the rest of the family gathered, the house filled with tension. Old wounds resurfaced, arguments about who had tried hardest to help him, who had given up too soon, who was to blame for letting him slip away. My uncle accused my father of being too harsh, My aunt blamed my mother for coddling him, and my cousin wondered aloud if the box was just another one of my brother's games. The box itself became a symbol of everything we didn't know about him. My niece, barely a teenager, asked if it was a treasure chest or a time capsule. My nephew, always suspicious, suggested it might be a prank or a trap. The adults argued over whether to open it together or leave it to me, the one he'd left it for. As the debate grew louder, I felt the old family rivalries flare up, resentments that had simmered for years, now boiling over in the face of uncertainty. The box was no longer just an object. It was a mirror, reflecting our fears, our hopes, and the fractures in our family. In the end, we agreed to wait. The box would stay in my care until I decided what to do. As the family drifted home, the house felt emptier than before. The silence heavy with things left unsaid. I realized that whatever was inside the box, it had already changed us, forcing us to confront not just my brother's disappearance, but the secrets and scars we all carried. After everyone left, I sat alone in the garage, the box resting on my lap. I turned it over, searching for any clue, and that's when I noticed a small envelope taped to the underside. My name was written on the front, in my brother's hurried scrawl. My heart pounded as I peeled it free, hands trembling with anticipation and dread. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a small tarnished key. The letter was short, but every word felt heavy. If you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry for leaving things the way I did. But there are some truths I couldn't carry anymore. This box holds pieces of my story, things I never told you, things I wish I'd had the courage to say. Don't open it with the family. Some secrets need to be faced alone first. When you're ready, use the key. I hope you'll understand why I did what I did. Maybe in the end it will help you forgive me and yourself. M. I stared at the letter, the words blurring as a wave of emotion crashed over me. My brother had always been a mystery, but this was different. This was an invitation, a challenge, and maybe a plea for understanding. The key felt cold and unfamiliar in my palm, a symbol of the distance that had grown between us. I thought about the arguments, the missed calls, the times I'd chosen silence over reaching out. I wondered what he'd hidden in the box. Evidence of pain, a confession, or perhaps a final attempt to make things right. The cryptic message left me with more questions than answers, but it also gave me a sense of purpose. I decided to wait until the house was quiet, until I could face whatever was inside without interruption. The box, the letter, and the key sat on my desk, a silent promise that the past was not as far away as I'd hoped. I knew that opening the box would mean opening old wounds, but I also knew it was the only way to find the truth my brother had left behind. That night, after the house had settled into silence, I sat at my desk with the box and the key. My hands shook as I slid the key into the lock, the metal cold and stubborn. For a moment I hesitated, wondering if I was ready for whatever waited inside, but curiosity and a longing for answers pushed me forward. With a soft click, the lock gave way and I slowly lifted the lid. Inside, the box was packed with a strange assortment of items, each one carefully arranged. On top was a stack of old photographs, some faded and creased, others sharp and recent. I recognized my brother in a few, standing in front of a rundown motel, laughing with strangers, sitting alone on a park bench. There were photos of places I'd never seen, people I'd never met, and a few that looked like they'd been taken in secret, the subjects unaware. Beneath the photos was a bundle of receipts, rubber banded together. I flipped through them, finding gas stations, bus tickets, and diners scattered across half the country. It was a breadcrumb trail of my brother's wandering, a map of the years he'd spent drifting from place to place. Some receipts had notes scribbled on the back. Met someone who knew Dad. Don't trust the man in the red hat. Call home? Next, I found a small battered journal. The cover was cracked, the pages filled with my brother's cramped handwriting. I skimmed the first few entries, fragments of thoughts, confessions and questions. Why did I leave? One page read, "What am I looking for?" Another entry was a list of names, some crossed out, others circled. There were sketches of faces, phone numbers and cryptic reminders. Find the truth before it's too late. At the bottom of the box was a sealed envelope, heavier than the rest. My name was written on the front, the ink smudged as if by a trembling hand. I held it for a long moment, feeling the weight of everything I didn't know about my brother, his pain, his regrets, his reasons for leaving. Each item in the box was a clue, a piece of a puzzle I hadn't even known existed. As I laid them out on the desk, I realized my brother had left me more than just memories. He'd left me a trail to follow, a story to finish, and perhaps a chance to finally understand the man he'd become and the reasons he'd disappeared. Opened the battered journal, its spine creaking as if it hadn't been touched in years. The first page was dated nearly a decade ago, the handwriting hurried and uneven. "If you're reading this, I guess I never made it back," my brother had written. "I'm sorry. I never wanted to disappear. But I couldn't stay, not after what I learned." The entries were raw, confessional, and sometimes rambling. He wrote about feeling like an outsider in our family, about the weight of expectations and the loneliness that crept in after our father died. "I always thought I was the problem," he admitted, "but then I found out the truth about what happened that summer." As I read on, the story unfolded in fragments. My brother described overhearing a conversation between our parents, an argument about money that had gone missing, about a betrayal that had never been spoken of again. He wrote about finding an old letter in Dad's desk, a letter from an uncle we'd been told had died young. The letter hinted at a family secret, a business deal gone wrong, a friendship destroyed, and a debt that had haunted our father for years. The journal was filled with regret. My brother blamed himself for not asking more questions, for not confronting Dad when he had the chance. "I thought if I could find Uncle Ray, maybe I could fix things," he wrote. "Maybe I could bring the family back together." He described his travels, tracking down old friends, following leads that led to dead ends, and piecing together a story that had been buried for decades. There were moments of hope, too. He wrote about meeting people who remembered our family fondly, about finding kindness in unexpected places. But the deeper he dug, the more he realized how much pain had been hidden beneath the surface. "We all carry secrets," he wrote, "but some secrets are like poison. They seep into everything until you can't tell what's real anymore." The final entries were the hardest to read. My brother wrote about feeling lost, about the guilt that kept him moving, and about the fear that he'd never be able to make things right. "If you're reading this, I hope you'll understand why I left. I hope you'll forgive me, and I hope you'll find the truth I couldn't face." I closed the journal, my hands shaking. The story I'd uncovered was one of regret, betrayal, and a desperate attempt to heal old wounds. My brother's confession was a mirror, forcing me to see not just his pain, but the fractures in our family that had been there all along. With the journal's confession still echoing in my mind, I finally turned to the sealed envelope. My name stared up at me in my brother's careful script, the paper thick and heavy with promise. I broke the seal, heart pounding, and unfolded the contents, a letter and a handful of photocopied documents. The letter was direct, almost businesslike, but the pain behind the words was unmistakable. "You deserve to know the truth," my brother wrote. "I found proof of what Dad and Uncle Ray tried to hide. It's not just about money, it's about what tore our family apart." The documents were copies of old legal papers, bank statements, and a faded photograph of our father and uncle, arms around each other, smiling in front of a small business. The business, it turned out, had been started with borrowed money, money that was never repaid. When the business failed, our father and uncle had blamed each other, and the fallout had split the family for good. But the real shock came in a handwritten confession from Uncle Ray, tucked among the papers. In shaky handwriting, Uncle Ray admitted to forging Dad's signature on a loan, leaving our father to shoulder the debt and the shame. "I was desperate," he wrote. "I thought I could fix it before anyone found out. But I couldn't, and I ran. I'm sorry for the pain I caused." My brother's letter continued. "I spent years tracking down these papers, trying to understand why our family fell apart. I thought if I could bring the truth to light, maybe we could finally heal. But the more I learned, the more I felt trapped by the weight of it all. I didn't know how to tell you, or if you'd even believe me." As I finished reading, the room seemed to tilt. The secret explained so much. Dad's bitterness, the unspoken tension at every family gathering, the way my brother had always seemed to carry a burden no one else could see. The truth was devastating, but it was also a relief. For the first time, I understood the pain that had driven my brother away and the courage it took for him to leave behind the evidence that would finally set us free. The next day I called the family together. We sat in the living room, the box and its contents spread out on the coffee table like evidence at a trial. No one spoke at first. My mother stared at the old photograph of Dad and Uncle Ray, her hands trembling. My sister kept glancing at the legal papers, her jaw clenched, while my father sat rigid in his chair, eyes fixed on the floor. I read my brother's letter aloud, my voice thick with emotion. As the truth spilled out, the room filled with a storm of reactions. My mother wept openly, mourning not just the secret, but the years lost to silence and suspicion. My father's face was a mask of anger and shame, and for a moment, I thought he might walk out. My sister's voice shook as she demanded answers. Why hadn't anyone told us? Why had we all been left to guess and wonder? Old wounds resurfaced. Arguments from years ago were dredged up. Accusations and regrets flying across the room. My father finally spoke, his voice raw. I thought I was protecting you. I thought if I kept it buried, we could move on. My mother shook her head, tears streaming down her face. We never moved on. We just drifted apart. But as the anger ebbed, something else took its place. We began to talk honestly about the pain of not knowing, the ways we'd hurt each other, and the hope that maybe, finally, we could start to heal. My sister apologized for her harsh words, my father for his silence, and my mother for the secrets she'd kept out of fear. I admitted my own regrets, the times I'd chosen distance over understanding. In that room, surrounded by the relics of our family's past, we found a new kind of closeness. The truth was painful, but it was also freeing. We promised to be better, to talk, to listen, to forgive. For the first time in years, I felt hope that we could move forward, not as a family defined by secrets, but as one united by honesty and the courage to face whatever came next, together. After the truth came out, I couldn't shake the feeling that my brother's story wasn't finished. The box and journal had given me more than just answers, they'd given me a trail to follow. I pored over every receipt, every scribbled note, every photograph, searching for patterns and places that might lead me to him. The more I looked, the more I realized how much he'd wanted to be found, even as he tried to disappear. I started with the most recent receipts, bus tickets to a small town 2 hours away, a diner bill with a date just weeks before he vanished. I called the diner, describing my brother, and the waitress remembered him. Quiet guy, always left a big tip, she said. He asked about the old mill on the edge of town. That was my next stop. The mill was abandoned, but in the dust I found a scrap of paper tucked under a loose floorboard. Keep going. You're almost there. My heart pounded with hope and fear. I followed the clues, an old friend's address, a postcard from a coastal city, a phone number scrawled in the margin of the journal. Each step brought me closer, not just to my brother, but to understanding the pain and longing that had driven him away. Along the way, I met people who'd crossed his path, some who'd helped him, others who'd simply listened. They told me stories of a man searching for forgiveness, for a place to belong, for a way to make peace with his past. Their words helped me see my brother not just as the sibling I'd lost, but as a man fighting his own battles. The journey was exhausting, but it changed me. I learned to let go of blame, to hold on to hope, and to believe that even the most broken families can find their way back to each other. I didn't know if I would find my brother, but I knew I would never stop searching, not just for him, but for the truth that could finally bring us home. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself changed by the journey my brother had set in motion. The box he left behind had forced us all to face the shadows in our family, to speak the truths we'd buried, and to forgive the mistakes that had haunted us for years. Our home felt different now, lighter, as if a weight had finally been lifted. My parents and sister began to talk more openly, sharing memories and regrets without fear or shame. We laughed about old times, cried over the pain we'd carried, and promised each other that silence would never again be our answer. The family that had once been fractured by secrets was slowly stitching itself back together, one honest conversation at a time. I still searched for my brother, following every lead, holding on to hope that one day he'd walk through the door or pick up the phone. But even as the search continued, I realized that the most important reunion had already begun, the reunion with ourselves, with the truth, and with the love that had survived. Despite everything, we started a new tradition, gathering once a month to share stories, questions, and even the hard things we used to avoid. The box, once a symbol of loss and confusion, now sat on the mantel as a reminder of what we'd overcome. It was empty, but it was also full of lessons, forgiveness, and the promise that we would never let secrets divide us again. As I looked around the table at my family, I felt a quiet hope for the future. We couldn't change the past, but we could choose how to move forward. And in that choice, I found peace, a new beginning, built on truth, courage, and the belief that, no matter how far we drift, family can always find its way home. If you've ever wondered what's hidden in the quiet corners of your own story, let this be your sign. Don't wait for secrets to find you. Go searching for the truth. It takes courage to open old boxes, but it takes even more to open your heart. Family isn't about perfection. It's about facing the hard things together and choosing honesty even when it hurts. If this journey moved you, help us keep these stories alive. Subscribe, like, and share. You never know whose life might change with just one story told at the right time. It had been months since we'd last spoken of the box. Months since we'd started to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could move forward. Then one rainy afternoon, I found a package on the doorstep. No return address, just my name written in a familiar looping script. My heart skipped as I carried it inside, calling the family to the kitchen. We gathered around the table, the old nervous excitement returning. I peeled back the brown paper, and there it was. The same wooden box my brother had left in my garage, now scuffed and travel-worn. Taped to the lid was a note for the next chapter. Inside, we found a small stack of photographs, my brother standing in front of landmarks we'd only ever dreamed of visiting, always with a quiet smile. There was a pressed flower from a distant field, a train ticket from a city across the country, and a new letter. In it, my brother wrote, "I'm still searching, but I'm not lost anymore. I carry you with me wherever I go. Thank you for setting me free." Tears welled in my mother's eyes, and my father's hands shook as he held the letter. My sister laughed through her tears, pointing out the places she wanted to visit with him someday. The box, once a symbol of pain and confusion, had become a bridge, a way for my brother to reach out, to let us know he was alive, healing, and still part of our story. That day we realized that family isn't just about who sits at the table, but about the love that finds its way home. No matter how far it travels, the box had come back, but this time it brought hope.